And so the adventure begins. Don and I set out from Burlington, Vermont, and headed over to Denver, where we would meet up with Trevor, spend a few days getting acclimatized to a little more altitude, then head over to the Indian Peak Wilderness and start at the Middle St. Vrain trailhead, head up the valley and camp at Camp 1, and then gain altitude and head over to Buchanan Pass. Buchanan Pass at 11,800 feet. Down the other side to our Camp 2 in the forest. Then the following day heading over to Monarch Lake. Here we picked up the Continental Divide Trail heading south to Camp 3 and then on to Camp 4 before heading up back onto the ridge to Devil's Thumb. So now back at 11,800 feet, continue along the ridge to our next camp at Corona Lake, and then the following day back up to and over Rollins Pass, following the old railroad track round to Forest Lakes and to the end of the trailhead in our end at East Portal. Before leaving Denver, though, we had to consult the Oracle, get all the food together, get on our boots, and get on our way. Heading over to the St. Vrain trailhead, Sawtooth Mountain and Buchanan Pass there in the background. Enjoying a spot of lunch before putting on those really heavy 40-odd pound packs. The Indian Peak Wilderness was protected by Congress in 1978 and is just south of the Rocky Mountain National Park. The hiking here in the Middle St. Vrain Valley is pretty easy going, slight gain in elevation through forests and past these beautiful streams. In our first night's camping in this beautiful glade here, as you can see, our first night's meal was pretty exotic as I'm cutting up an avocado. A new day, trying to cross the stream without getting feet wet, and we noticed that the wildflowers were out, which was a nice surprise as we thought that most of them would have passed by now. At any rate, making our way up, gaining altitude, heading up towards Buchanan Pass, taking a breather after the long uphill climb. Well, we're making our way up slowly and just coming out of and getting beyond the tree line, and you can see now we're into just low scrub and shingle, and that's Buchanan Pass top up there. So we're going up this track. I like to call it the huff and puff. There's a couple of steps forward and then a breather as we approach the top at 11,800 feet in permanent snowfields in this area. Here we are on top of the world and in good time. I like to get off the ridge before the afternoon thunderstorms roll in. I'm going to head over the ridge and down the other side and then follow the valley, Thunderbolt Peak off on the side there, and then as we wind our way down the valley we'll pick up Buchanan River and see if we can find a campsite down there. So now we headed down the valley through these beautiful meadows in spectacular scenery and wildflowers that were just in full bloom, just breathtaking. Well, like on cue, the afternoon thunderstorms started rolling in, and we hurried down so as we could get lower altitude. Now out of harm's way and the rain is subsiding, looking for a campsite, we came across this mule deer. We were glad to get our heads down that night, but we did have this visitor. Another nice day in breakfast, and then pack everything up. It's always a challenge to see if you can get everything back into your backpack, of course. Some have really neat backpacks. Our route today was to keep on heading down the valley until we came to Monarch Lake, and then turn south on the Continental Divide Trail and head over to Junco Lake and find a suitable campsite there. It was a pretty stiff climb out of Monarch Lake. on the Continental Divide Trail. It takes a couple of hours of huff and grunt, that's for sure. Finally arriving at the higher plateau, it was time for a well-earned rest in the sun and a spot of lunch. The afternoon hiking was a lot easier, and we looked around for a suitable campsite. Since they made me carry most of the weight, I was in rapid need of an infusion when I got to camp. Don makes us get up so early in the morning, it always leads to confusion, and then these guys trying to read the map doesn't instill too much confidence into you. We were really enjoying a good spell of weather. In this section of the walk we had these beautiful wide meadows, forests and the mountains in the background, very, very picturesque. We came across a couple of guys with pack horses on the trail, really interesting characters. They were doing about 100 miles each year, and they'd started off way down south, and they were slowly making their way to Wyoming, evidently. They were like typical cowboys. They had the big tent and the cooking utensils, and of course they had the horses to carry all this gear. This just looked like prime wildlife country. Big open meadows and the trees for hiding in, and lo and behold we came across this moose. So now we were approaching another waypoint, Junco Lake, and from here we'd be going through another forest with these tall telegraph pole pines. Beautiful, and looking for our next campsite. So we located this great campsite in this meadow, right by a stream, some shade trees, have our afternoon siesta, and this was a beautiful place. This was a dark sky area, so there was a meteor shower expected in the evening, so this was going to be a great place to camp. We were able to catch a couple of meteors during the night, but the big surprise was in the morning when we found out that during the night the temperature had plummeted way down to 0 degrees. Ice on the tent, heavy frost, the water was frozen, and what a chilly start that was. The sun, though, soon came up over the mountain, and the sun worshippers came out in droves. The flowers didn't seem to have suffered much from the overnight frost, which is more than we can say for some of the clothes that were left out, like these rigid socks. The beautiful thing about it was that this mist came up as the sun came out, and it was drifting around, causing all these beautiful swirl patterns. So we're about to come under starter's orders here. Oh, and there's the off flag, so now we're got to put the packs on, do our daily morning exercises, make sure I don't fall in the river. And we've got a pretty heavy climb ahead of us, back up onto the ridge to Devil's Thumb, up around 12,000 feet again. And so the first part of the climb is pleasant through the woods, but then soon, rapidly, we're climbing, following this river up the valley. After a morning of gaining altitude towards the ridge, we emerge into the upper meadows, where there's a great display of wildflowers. So looking back there between the trees, you can see that meadow. That's where we were camping last night. Well, Devil's Thumb coming into view, and we're just making our way up onto the ridge. We're just going to pan around here. We're looking east towards the Denver Boulder direction. Afternoon hike will take us as we move along the ridge going south, eventually heading towards Corona Lake. This is all high altitude walking here around 11,000 feet. Taking a break in the afternoon, enjoying the sun, and Trevor didn't realize that he had Obi-Wan Kenobi next to him, of course. This trail, of course, aptly named the High Lonesome Trail. You certainly are on your own, way up here. Anyway, the interesting thing is these alpines that are growing at around 11,000 feet are beautiful. They look like crocuses. You see the trail wending its way in the distance towards Roland Pass, and then a little further along we can see Pump House Lake comes into view, and then Corona Lake, and it's Corona Lake where we'll be making our camp for the night. As we made our way down to Corona Lake, we came across these colonies of marmots who were not too happy to see us and were setting off all kinds of alarm calls. Another great campsite by the lake. After we'd got our camp sorted and eaten our meal, the sun was setting. Nice sunset. These backpacking trips always turn up some interesting sleeping arrangements. This one's pretty unique. Well, another nice day. Certainly a lot warmer than the previous night. And so we're going to say goodbye to Corona Lake here, and we're going to make our way back up onto the ridge and go over Rowland's Pass. So this is a great photograph. This is what you think of when you think of mountain men, that's for sure. In the early 1900s, the railroad actually ran over this pass to 11,600 feet. It was not a cog railway, but it was a 4% grade, and they used quite a few engines, I think, to make it over the top. It must have been brutal in the winter, and some of these old pictures show how deep the snow used to be. They used to have to cut through with a rotary snowplow, and there was a hotel on top, I believe, as well. For us, we'll just follow the old railroad bed downhill for a few miles, and then we'll be cutting off to through Forest Lakes. This is one of the old railroad trestles still in operation. Bridges the gap over one of these gorges. Yeah, quite a drop and quite an engineering feat. Still here after these 100-odd years. So now we leave the old railroad and head off on a separate track down through Forest Lakes. It's beautiful lakes, very clear, pretty, and it's just a series of these lakes as you make your way down. So this is the end of our hike, and that's coming to the east portal, where now a railroad tunnel goes through and under the Rocky Mountains versus over the top. Unfortunately, all great things have to come to an end, and this is the end of our hike. Good friends, good company, and you can't beat that.